The first season of Formula One's new ground effect era has given us some really exciting on-track action, and despite Verstappen's dominant title win, most other positions are still very much up for grabs. In fact, Günther Steiner thinks that the sport's now turned into a tough crowd. Well, in this video, we're going to talk about the battle for 6th in the Constructors' Championship and some more new rules to bunch up the grid, so keep watching. First off, Steiner weighs in on F1's competitiveness. It's been a roller coaster of a season for Haas. They started off really well and even nabbed double points in one of the earlier races, but in recent weeks, their form has really dropped off. In fact, both Kevin Magnussen and Mick Schumacher have failed to score a single point in the last 7 races, despite some frankly decent outings. Now, you could say that they haven't been bringing many aero upgrade packages, especially during the latter half of the season, and perhaps Schumacher's earlier misadventures with the barriers have somewhat halted the team's progress on the front too. According to the team boss Günther Steiner, though, it's down to the teams being so closely matched rather than a drop-off in form for Haas. Speaking to the press ahead of the United States Grand Prix, he said that people focus a bit too much on negatives, and when you have a string of poor results, it can definitely feel like everything's going wrong. Formula One got 10 excellent teams now, and with most of them competing for points, you gotta fight everyone. Obviously, you could point towards some fairly obvious incidents through the season where Haas lost points because their bad strategy calls. Japan, for instance, was shaping up to be a great race for Schumacher until the team took a gamble and decided to not pit him for a fresh pair of tires. Up next, the Haas boss Roos lost points at Monza. Now, to be fair to Steiner, the team deserves to be a bit higher in the Constructors' Championship. Like, they've had some pretty stellar drives ruined by either relatability issues or just very unfortunate crashes. Having said that, it's not like other teams don't have other issues either, so it's very much a race of who can stay more consistent over the course of a season. And according to the Italian, the margin for error this season is much lower than before. Like, not only do you now have to make room for yourself within the established point scorers, but even the teams that used to be below have stepped up their game. Nick de Vries, for instance, did a fantastic job for Williams at Monza and scored a couple of very impressive points. In a way, he actually stole those points from Haas rather than giving them to his team. And that's kind of been the mantra for a lot of teams locked in this close battle for 6th at the moment. Seriously though, even those who are on the fringes of points finish have started to pit for the fastest lap point. So the Haas boss has definitely got a point, as before this season, he didn't need to worry about Williams stealing points from him. Obviously, the other side could say the same thing about the team, but that's just a testament to how competitive Formula One has gotten. What's more, it's harder than ever to score points. Even though back-marketer teams have gotten more competitive this season, Steiner thinks that it's perhaps the top team's consistency that stopped everyone else from scoring points. Like, in a race that doesn't have any DNFs from any of your usual Mercedes, Red Bulls, and Ferraris, you've barely got a top 10 spot to challenge for. Plus, even McLaren and Alpine have stepped up massively during the latter half of the season, so you've basically got 5 teams who have established themselves as definite point scorers in a race. And to steal anything from the world would be considered an anomaly. As we mentioned, those teams literally have to wait for someone to mess up to score points. Otherwise, on any other normal F1 weekend, the top 6 spots are always taken by the big guy. According to the Haas team boss though, it's the fact that they're so consistent and reliable that's so tricky to deal with. For instance, the top 4 teams are pretty much insurmountable, and the fight to the 9th and 10th position is usually between the other 6 teams. That said, the Italian refused to feel any sort of frustration over it. Instead, he just chalked it down to a more competitive atmosphere, which, albeit not being great for himself personally, is still good for the sport. Besides, there's no shame in admitting that the other teams just did a better job in the construction of their car. Interestingly, this has been the theme for much of Steiner's reign at Haas, as the team has had to struggle a lot through financial turmoil. Plus, ejecting major Russian sponsor Uralkali alongside Mazepin probably did not help either. Let's talk about Steiner's opinion on the budget cap. Now, while it's true Haas may have struggled with the financial backing over the past few seasons, at least the gulf between them and the top team isn't as big as it used to be. Like, believe it or not, the budget cap has fulfilled its purpose of making things fairer. Plus, it also gives more leeway to lower tiered teams in terms of wind tunnel testing and other extra benefits, and that's exactly what Günther Steiner seems to think as well. When asked about his opinion on the budget cap, he said that despite everything that's been going on, the financial limit works, plus the teams have probably never been closer to each other than they are now. Of course, he's referring to the insane fight for 6th place in the constructors table with less than 20 points separating 4 teams. In fact, Haas is currently level with AlphaTauri on 34 points, and according to the Italian, anyone could score points at any moment, cause those final 2 places are very much still attainable. Also, as we reach the back end of the season, we're bound to see an increase in engine failures or penalties, as teams run out of their allocations for the year, so you can push everyone up the grid as well. Besides, who knows, maybe we'll see even better racing a couple years down the road when the cost cap is shrunk even further. Coming up, F1 CEO defends the sport's new rules. Alright, so even though the new financial and aero regulations have definitely resulted in closer on-track racing this year, there's still this massive question mark looming over the plan's long-term effectiveness. Like, sure, this season started off with Ferrari at a pace advantage, but it didn't take long for Red Bull to come out swinging and dominate the rest of the grid, and with a championship that's already been decided with 4 races left on the calendar, it's definitely not replicating the nail-biting action of last year. According to the sport's CEO, Stefano Domenicali, it's just a matter of time until we see other teams catch up to the likes of Red Bull and Ferrari as well. Speaking to Italian media, he said that although the title's been already decided, they've still already sold out in the remaining Grand Prix on the calendar. Of course, that doesn't answer whether we'll be getting a better championship fight next year. At the same time, it just shows the level of investment people have in the sport, and now, more than ever, they're willing to follow fights that don't just involve the front row of the grid. The F1 boss also reinforced his idea that no team has fully found its groove yet from a technical point of view. Plus, it's important to understand just how quickly performance gaps can be closed between seasons, so he's not worried about the new regulations at all. Finally, Domenicali vows to police the F1 cost cap. Now, even though Max Verstappen has won his 2nd world championship already, he's still at risk of losing his maiden title. And in a way, this whole Red Bull cost cap controversy has kinda ruined what was supposed to be a time for celebrating on the Flying Dutchman. That said, Formula 1 CEO isn't ready to give any leeway in terms of any regulation breaches. After all, the minute someone steps out of line and spends more than they're allowed, the entire system collapses. Besides, even a couple of $1 million can mean the difference between winning the championship or coming up as a runner-up, so Domenicali is pretty adamant about working alongside the FIA to come up with appropriate punishment to maintain the credibility of the financial rules. And according to him, it's incredibly important to verify every single detail of the data that's been submitted by the team, as any lapse of judgment can have some enormous repercussions. Not only that, but the Italian also honed in on the fact that this is going to be a running theme for him and the FIA as they find their feet within the new era for the sport. But that's a wrap for this video, my friends. Do you think the new regulations have made Formula 1 more competitive? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more videos just like this. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.